Welcome back to Attitude Effort Results presented by Teamwork Online and the Clubhouse. I'm excited today. Today's going to be an inquisitive conversation with a very intelligent man. I'm going to have to make sure I am on my A game to make sure the questions are correct for Andre. I'm excited to have you on today. Honestly, I'm excited for most guests, but today I think we're going to dive deep into candidly maybe some following problems, and we're going to get into that side of what you do. So welcome to Attitude Effort Results.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited. Been a fan of your guys' podcast. Excited to be on it now.
I appreciate you. Well, fan of the podcast is awesome. Love that. If you're hearing that, share this episode so everybody can be a fan of it. I'm really excited to learn from your side. So you found a need in B2B sales, and we're going to jump right in today.
Yep.
B2B is one of my most passionate topics. That's what my career path is, but it's really about finding problems, following those, filling those needs. Talk to me about what drove you to find B2B as one of the things that you enjoy most or that you find the most success in.
Yeah, I'll try and make this brief. There's a couple things that happened throughout my career. I think as I look back, so real quickly, I worked for Arizona Diamondbacks, Houston Astros, Miami Marlins. I used to my helmet there, Arizona State. So I spent some time working at my alma mater in the athletic department. And a lot of what, as you know, a lot of what we sell in sports is B2C. And so you see the Astros picture there. We won the World Series in 2017. Tons of fans came and bought tickets. We set records, like MLB records for new season ticket sales. My resume looks great those 4 years, but not a lot of businesses were buying. And we're in Houston, one of the biggest, business communities within the country. And like, all right, we need a proactive effort. But as I look back, it was very flawed. It was like, all right, let's pull some leads, call some businesses, but like there wasn't a strong approach to it. So that was one. That was like, all right, we need to get better at this. And then two, I was having a conversation with one of our ticketing leads at MLB. His name is Mike Luderin, and he asked a question. This is when I was VP of ticket sales with the Marlins. He's like, why don't sports teams do a better job selling to businesses? And I just went down this rabbit hole for like the next year and a half of just like, how do we figure this out? Like there wasn't a ton of demand necessarily for our product. So, but being in Miami, like that's a large business community as well. Like we gotta tackle, we gotta figure it out. And what I learned is I got humbled very quickly. Like what companies do outside of sports, like all they do is B2B, and like the way they align with marketing, the way they go about their process is very structured. It's not like, all right, let's pull some leads and in the off season, let's call some businesses. Like it is a very, disciplined, structured process. So when I got into consulting, I was like, there's a gap there. Not that people can't do it in sports. I think we're all really good salespeople. It's just shifting the way you approach that conversation, because the way you talk to a fan or a family or, a past season ticket holder is different than having a conversation with a business. And this because this is what you focus on, but like talking about ROI, talking about business outcomes and like how it's going to drive their business and leading with that. Not, the team made the playoffs last year, or, we got these benefits and like, all inclusive seats. Like that's great once you get them on board, but it's a completely different conversation. I think that's a gap that, I could potentially fill and help out across the industry.
I love that you set the foundation for that because everything I do now is B2B. I
Mm-hmm.
think 90% of what I do now is B2B, and I love it. Figuring out
Yeah.
where their problems are, right? I sit across from most CEOs that I talk to. One of the first questions is what keeps you up at night? Like, what drives you absolutely nuts that you can't figure out? What drives you nuts that you can't drive business or relationships or employee growth? What is that? I don't know if I have the problem or I don't know if I have the solution.
Yep.
But if I can figure out what the problem is, now we can go and have some fun. And now I can go to work, right? That's when my work starts. You glossed over it. I want to dive deeper. Your career
Mm-hmm.
path has been an awesome one. You have a really
Yeah.
cool background, way cooler than mine, which is kind of upsetting because I used to have a pretty good one back in Arizona and now I'm running out. But your background is vast, mostly in the MLB, all the way up to vice president. What were some of the key takeaways throughout your career path? Everybody can go to LinkedIn and see exactly
Mm-hmm.
what it was. But what were some of the takeaways that you had that led you into what you're doing now?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I was fortunate of is, I didn't rush to move up the ladder. And like sometimes you kind of feel the pressure too. And, you see people like taking jobs, you're like, oh, I could go do that job. But like staying very focused. I had really good bosses. Getting into my career at the Diamondbacks, that's where I started, very first inside sales class they had back in November 2007. I lucked into the leadership team that, that I just happened to step into. Like now these people are, C-level executives all across sports and went on to be vice presidents, senior vice presidents. A lot of us that were, reps went on to be managers, directors, VPs, and continuing in sports. A lot of them are even still there with the Diamondbacks. And so I think that laid the foundation of, people first. I remember finding your podcast. I was like, what's attitude after results? Like we talked about that all through training. It was all up on the walls. I'm like, who is this guy? What are they doing? Like they just took that and made a podcast. But I love it because that was like what we really focused on and honed in on. Control what you can control, and if you have the right attitude, effort, the results will come. And so that's something that stuck with me throughout my career. So I didn't know. There was definitely doubts and insecurities. Like, all right, am I ever going to make it to be an inside sales manager? Like that was a big goal of mine. Am I ever going to be a director? I mean, it'd be great if I could be a vice president one day. And so I think through that in each step I've learned like, yes, you may not, know exactly everything you need to do right when you step into that role, but you got to trust in yourself that you're going to figure it out because every step along the way I did. So, getting to the point I'm in now where stepping in entrepreneurship and like betting on yourself, it's like, all right, I figured it out at every other step throughout my career. I'll figure this out. Maybe it won't happen overnight like I want it to, but I've always found a way. And whether it's leaning on resources or people in my network or just asking questions and studying and learning, like being coachable, like that was something that's helped me throughout my career and has helped me as in this past year plus as I've been in entrepreneurship.
You mentioned something that I want to dive into a little bit deeper. You talked about climbing as fast as you can.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I've had to do, and I've been very transparent on this podcast, is taking a step back from my own ego. Because as a man, I think in a high level leader, you want to one provide, but you also want to grow. And you're looking at other people and going, they're growing faster than me. I got to go harder.
Mm-hmm.
They're growing faster than me. I'm doing something wrong. And you start to compare. And comparison is a very deep, dark hole to get down. What did you do or what have you done to kind of eliminate some of the comparison or even just to mitigate some of that? Because I think it's something the young audience for sure with social media today for sure deals with. Like, what are some of the ways that you've dealt with that?
Yeah, I think I'll start here. So on this screen, I have a picture of my family. So my wife, my three daughters. After one of my daughter's softball game or t-ball games, I think that's really humbled me and centered me too of like what's really important. But going back to when I was early in my career, it was just me. I just felt blessed to be able to work in sports. I grew up in Phoenix. I was a big fan of the Diamondbacks. To get to work for the team right down the street, like that was super cool. But then you see, it's like, oh, all right, this person in the NBA, they're like, right, in 2 years you got to be a senior AE, and then you got to be a manager a year later, and then you got to go be a senior manager here, and like you just bounce and move around. And so I had to get off LinkedIn. It's crazy now to think about it because I'm on LinkedIn all the time now. But like for a good year, 2 years when I was a rep, I had to get
Whoa.
off because I was like a hater. Because I would see this person, I'd be like, I'm just as good as that person, or we started around the same time, and like it would just make me negative. And so I had a lot of humbling to do early in my career. Yeah, I don't know I necessarily had an ego, but I definitely like there was some negative emotions that would charge like a lot of the decisions I would make as I was trying to grow my career. And comparison is what you said. And you hear from like your mentors who are like, it doesn't necessarily matter. You're going to work like the next 30 plus years of your career. Once you get to a certain spot, none of that stuff's going to matter. You're like, yeah, whatever, dude. Like, I'm trying to move up. I'm trying to get up there and everything like that. And there, it's so true. Like, you get, and maybe it's not an age thing, but for me, it was like getting later in my 30s. Now I just turned 40 this year. It's like, dude, what were you doing? Like, just enjoy the ride. And so, like, I get asked that question a lot. Like, what advice do you give yourself? It's like, be where your feet are and just enjoy what you're doing, crush the job that you're in. If you get to be a director in the next year, great. If you don't, oh well, like, there's other opportunities. And, you and I, we talked about this, before, but like, faith is a big thing for me. So, one, comparing yourself, that's definitely like something I shouldn't be doing as a Christian. But then two, it's like God may have a different plan for you. And that's definitely what I've learned throughout my career is like I had all this like mapped out. I was going to do this. Like my dream job was I was going to be the inside sales manager for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And like a year before I was kind of ready for that step, one of my good friends who's still there, Mike DeLosa, he gets that role. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to get that. So, pivot, I go to Arizona State. That leads me to going to the Astros. That leads me to getting here to the Marlins. Like, And like if I had stayed with the plan I originally had, I wouldn't be where I'm at today with the family I have, living, doing what I'm doing. So it's just funny looking back on all of it because it's been 17, 18 years now, and just thinking like at each step in my career, like what I thought was the thing, and like when it didn't happen, like how crushed I was. But you bounce back, like you keep going. So
Well, Mike DeLosa is actually one of the reasons that Hunter got brought to Arizona and why this podcast exists.
oh, that's great.
So thank you for not kicking Mike DeLosa out of the organization and beating him out that day.
Yep. He's a good friend. We sat right next to each other, sold tickets with each other. My wife now, she actually went to go work for the Diamondbacks and he was her boss. And so playing all this out, like if I had been the manager, I wouldn't have started dating her. We wouldn't be married. We wouldn't have the family we have. So like there's so many things like you think about that, just play itself out. And she's gonna kill me that this is what we talked about on the podcast, but yeah.
Well, you and I can confidently say that God had his hand in that
Yeah.
for sure. We talked briefly about faith. Obviously, I will never push that on anybody, but we're very open on this platform and in our lives, my wife and my life, and you were as well. Where have you seen faith come into play in the sport industry? How have you navigated those waters throughout your career? Because that is a touchy subject. How have you navigated that? Not just in the sport industry, but in your career
Just in
in
general,
general.
yeah. Yep. So I grew up, going to church every Sunday. My mom, she volunteered at church. She counted the money on Sunday, so we had to stay, like, go early and stay for like all the services. I was always there. Got away from it a little bit, like in college, and like you're kind of living your life and everything like that. But it always kind of kept me centered. And she worked in HR, my mom, her whole career, and so she helped me toe that line of like being professional, but she was like, never like hide behind your faith. Like
Mm.
this is like what got us to where we are and what's going to get you to where you are. And so what I've learned is, like you said, never pushing it on anyone. But it's so interesting. Like I was having a conversation with someone, he's like an EVP at one of the teams. And like somehow it came up, like I was mentioning faith. He's like, hey, did you know I was a Christian? I said, no. And I've known him for 10 plus years. And so we got on this conversation about this and started talking about our faith and everything like that. So there's been so many instances in my career where just being open about who I am, what I stand for, has attracted people that are like, hey, this is something that's important to me. And I even had a rep once, one of inside sales reps, she came up to me after I did kind of, get to meet everyone and you're telling about your background. She's like, this makes me feel so comfortable. I've never met a leader who's so open about their faith. And, I feel like there's a connection there and like, I could trust you and everything like that. So I think for me, it's been never hiding behind it. I'm never going to push that on anyone. There's definitely conversations I've had with reps because when you manage people, like they're going through stuff like, maybe you should like go to church
Have you
and
thought
in a
about
joking way,
Jesus?
yeah. And so we've had fun with it, but no, I think my biggest takeaway is just being open about it, sharing about it, and that leads to different conversations. And if someone isn't, it's not for them, that's okay too. But for me, that's important. And if I'm going to show up my whole self to work and people get to know me and trust me, like that's something that's like really important to me.
One, it sounds like the important piece for you is impacting people. So if you're managing people and they have that conversation, it can lead that way, right? Because with impact, everybody impacts somebody in some way. But what type of impact are you having? Is it
Hmm.
a negative experience? Is it a positive experience? And there are some people, I went to school with somebody for 4 years, had them up. We had a weekend together where we all went around the circle to say a positive thing about the group, which seemingly doesn't happen a ton. And actually, that's the only ever time it happened. I should probably make that happen more often. It was really fun.
Hmm.
And she came around and said, I have seen you for the last couple of years, and your faith is something that I admire. Never knew, never had that
Hmm.
conversation before. And she said it in a large group, and she said, that's been impactful. And it doesn't have to be us pushing it on people, but it's how we live and it's how we work conversations. It's how we have deep relationships with people. And you're one of the better people at that in building conversations and building relationships. And you've enjoyed growing and coaching people throughout your career. What's been one of the biggest pieces that you've enjoyed about growing and coaching people throughout your career?
Yeah, I think the coaching piece. I always wanted to be like a coach. I didn't play high enough baseball to like keep that going, like, down that path. So getting to work in baseball and on the business side was really cool. I think it's that. It's seeing people grow and develop. Like it's seeing that first, inside sales rep that you hired. They come and interview. They're a little rough. Like they didn't wear a suit or their suit was wrinkled, but like you see something in them, and you're like, all right, like we can clean them up and like get them going, and like you see them now excel in their career, and some are directors, VPs, everything like that. That's one, and then two, being like on this side of it now and getting to work with either people that I managed at some point, and now they're leading teams and running staffs, and like going through the ups and downs of being a first time director, first time vice president, whether it's me in actual partnership capacity working with them or just having conversations like this and like talking through them like, hey, here's what's around the corner that maybe you're not thinking of. Here are some of the blind spots because like you're just learning, and I had to learn too. So now I get to like watch them kind of go through that and hear the conversations that are happening in the executive room that you need to be aware of, and like here's what you need to prepare for. So that's been fun too. Now on this side of it, getting to see people that I knew early in their career and were just trying to like make their first sale or like hit their goal, and now they're leading people, and you start to see your coaching tree kind of grow and develop and everything like that. And the other piece that's just fun is still getting to talk to and connect with like recent college grads or soon to be college grads. They'll see some of the stuff I post on LinkedIn, they'll reach out, want to have a conversation. I take as many of those as possible. One, because I'm blessed that people took the time to pour into me and I want to pay that back. But also it keeps me sharp on like what's going on, what's my pulse of the industry. I said a lot of leaders kind of get detached as they moved up throughout their career, and there's this new generation that's coming in, and you're probably closer to it, but being able to still be relevant, still connect with them, understand, and like I'm still learning too. So every conversation I have, I'm like, oh, okay, like this is how teams are going about things now, or this is what they're learning in college that which is light years ahead. Like I wouldn't get a job today based on the way that I went and like interviewed and what I learned in college, because they're just so much more advanced than we were coming up.
Well, and you say more advanced than we were growing up, but that's because of people like you.
Yeah.
That's because of platforms like this. So I actually had somebody reach out to me from an organization. This actually happens a decent amount. Hunter has it too, where organizations are reaching out to us to try to get their ear towards the ground, because that's important. And we have our ear on the ground. We have coaching clients that we work with to try to build the resume, build their interview skills. And we have leaders from across the country reaching out saying, hey, I need this role filled. Like, who do you have? That
Hmm.
part for me is so much fun, and something that I didn't realize I was going to enjoy was the growth of people. And that's something that you've been really, really good at. And so I appreciate you sharing that. I want to shift gears a little
Hmm.
and talk about failure, because we're going to get to your role now in entrepreneurship and where you're at, and that's going to be the climb up. But I want to start going downhill first.
Hmm.
Talk to me about the Marlins. Talk to me about that transition. This is something that we're going to hear right now that most people won't talk about. You're a real individual. You've given us permission to hear the insights of it. Talk to us about being at the top of the mountain, vice president. You never thought you'd be an inside sales manager. That was your goal. You climbed the ladder to vice president. Take us from there.
Yep. Super stoked to be a vice president. So I started January 2020. Um, my wife, she's from South Florida. At the time, Derek Jeter was CEO, first black CEO in baseball. Like everything couldn't have been better. Like we're down here in Miami, beautiful weather. We're getting settled in. We're close to family. We have our two daughters. We had our third one when we got here. And then obviously the pandemic happened, so that shook up everyone's lives. But then coming out of it, I was able to kind of rebuild the staff and get things going and have a momentum and starting to see success. We felt obviously we wanted to, and I personally wanted to grow quicker, but understand that like it takes time to build something that's sustainable. I saw that in Arizona, I saw that in Houston, saw that as we were building in Miami, and just through changes within the organization, they decided they want to go in a different direction with the leadership team. I had really strong connections across the organization. I felt did a really good job, but um, obviously that's a blow you're not expecting, what you're not ready for. And I think, what's been good is, it's been, 14, 15 months since, I've been able to kind of digest some of that and see, one, where I could have improved and where I could have been better as a leader. And, I like to share a lot of that, and I'm open and transparent about it, on LinkedIn and as I talk to other people too. But two, it kind of helped me to get to where I am now. So just quick backstory. It was a Friday. I had a conversation. My wife, she had always thought about starting her own consulting company. Her background is digital marketing after she got out of sports and social media marketing. We had a conversation with the guy that left the Houston Astros to go start his own creative design agency or creative agency. And we were just talking like, hey, what was the transition like? What are things we look forward to? And he's like, hey, here's what I see Brittany, getting started with the company. You got your thing going in sports. That could be the next 4 or 5 years. Who knows? Like, ride that thing out, right? But at some point, maybe you join her, maybe you don't. But like, that's what I see. But again, going back to faith, I know your faith's really important to you. So pray about it and see what God thinks. So that weekend, we talk, we didn't even really talk about that. We're just both kind of like, oh, wow, like, is she really about to go do this and go start this? And, we're both like, God, give us a sign on like what's next. That Monday I get let go. I was like, God, I wasn't wanting the sign like today. Like, I wanted it years from now. And so, looking back, I had already been thinking about, what potentially I would be doing. It was around B2B, it was around consulting. I was too afraid to make the step on my own. So someone had to pull me out of that situation and make that happen. And probably the best thing that's happened to me, because like you said, now it's, on the way up and transitioning and doing something that I feel like can make a bigger impact on, and probably what I was always called to do anyways. But yeah, like to your point, like you step into a vice president role, there's the swagger, the ego that comes with that. Like, I'm a VP of ticket sales at one of the big four sports teams, and you get humbled of like, yeah, we're gonna go in a different direction, and you see that happen, to a lot of leaders throughout your career, mentors you've had in your career. Then you realize like that sometimes that's just part of the job. Like maybe you're just not the right fit, or maybe just like the business goes a different direction. Maybe stuff's out of your control. But at the end of the day, when adversity happens, I've heard this before, and this is something that, like, I was prepping for. I didn't even realize that, like, you revert to your level of training. So like mentally and like emotionally and spiritually, I was doing all these things just prepare myself for, should adversity happen or whatever the next step is in my career, like, getting up early, meditating, just journaling things and like prepping myself for being a better just individual. So when that happened, some people were like, man, you seem happy. I was like, no, like it was just like I'm ready to take the next step. I didn't want this to happen, but I also am not going to sit around and just mope about it. Like, all right, like it's something that happened. Let's learn from it. Let's take the lessons and like continue to move forward. So, but to your point about not a lot of people want to talk about it. I did carry for a little bit this insecurity, this guilt. Like, do people know what happened? Do people think I left on my own? So like as you're doing consulting, like, hey, I can come help your team. In the back of your head is like, do they know that I got let go? Like, do they know? Like, there's that doubt? And I was talking to someone who's looking to get into consultant too, recently, that got let go from a role. I'm like, hey, are you holding on to like this like guilt and like this like fear inside of you that people are gonna like looking through you? And he's like, yeah, 100%. I'm like, just so you know, that's normal. Like I did too. But at the end of the day, like know that you provide a ton of value. So yeah, I definitely want to share because that's not something you think about. And as people listen to this podcast, grow up in your career, I hope it never happens to anyone. But if you do, being prepared for that and knowing that that's something, but like, being able to take those next steps should you get hit with adversity is big.
Yeah, you pray about it Friday night, and then God gives you an answer on Monday, and you're like, no, not that answer. That's not. No,
I
like,
didn't want I didn't want that.
yeah, let me go back. You talked about preparation, that you were, when it happened, you were not happy about it, but you were prepared for whatever was in front of you. I think a lot of people out there are really scared of the unknown, and part of being scared of the unknown is being unprepared.
Hmm.
You're scared of the unknown. That means you should look internally a little bit and say, how prepared am I? What have I been doing day after day to prepare myself for if something had happened? Is that a financial reserve for your bank account? Like you need to be less scared about losing your job because you're going to go broke. Okay, what can we do when we're not broke to set ourselves up for that? What can I do to learn skill wise so if a pandemic happens, I can go be in customer relations, right? AI is coming in. I heard a quote the other day that said AI will not take human jobs, but humans who learn and adapt with AI will take human jobs who do not learn and adapt with AI.
Yep,
So, what
I
are
agree
you
with that
doing now?
100%.
Yeah, what are you doing now to prepare for what happens? We don't know what's going to happen with AI. We don't. It's going to come in a massive way. But what are you doing to learn about it? Can you go learn about it? Can you take a course? So I love the fact that you were prepared. And again, you weren't smiling, skipping out the door as you got let go, but you were prepared for what is now something that you get to impact people. Tell us what you're doing now, how you got into that, what that process was like.
Yep. So, there was like a brief second where it's like, all right, you've done a good job leading sports teams and you're getting to a vice president level. Like, do you go look for another role? And not to, I know a lot of people are in sports, but like that process, like when I thought about it, was just exhausting. Like going back through that again of, all right, let's go look for a job, an interview, and all that, and like getting executive team on board and like aligned and everything like that. I was like, I'm just not I don't have the energy for that today, right now. And so, my wife, Brittany, we talked about it. Like, hey, we've discussed this before. Knowing that potentially like this would be something we would do. Like, are you in? And so, yeah, we never look back. And to your point about the fear is being unprepared. I think that was my biggest fear. Is like I had prepped. I felt pretty confident about but like you don't know what you don't know. Like until you put yourself out there and you're in sales, like sales doesn't really happen until you start pitching something. And like you really know if you have a product that people want and like how do you adjust until you talk to people. You can come with your game plan all you want and like we're going to say this and we're going to coach this and like when they get this objection, we're going to combat it with this like until you get out there and start talking to people and marketing your product, like you really don't know what you have. And that was probably my biggest lesson is like I just started having conversations with people. And my calendar was just as booked like after as it was like in a normal work day working in sports. And my wife's like, I feel like you haven't left. I'm like, I just know this. Like my life is a 30-minute time block. And so like I would just reach out to like buddies in the industry and people I talk to, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Hey, can we jump on a call? I know that we've talked about this before. And like it's funny like the people I thought would be my clients weren't, and like people that came out of like nowhere to see me like have reached out and like those have been some of the clients that I work with. So to answer your question, what I'm doing now is we're mostly in sports, but we also have clients outside of sports as well, but do B2B sales and marketing consulting for sports teams and small businesses. So at the end of the day, really help them increase sales. And, a lot of times you get, especially in sports, you kind of get pigeonholed to like, oh, sales trainer. It's like, that is part of it. And that's typically where a lot of people need help, but there's a lot more that comes to generating revenue and increasing sales. Like one team I was pulling leads for today. So they have the right leads to go after and target. And I treat it as if I was a salesperson for their team. Like, who would I want to go after? What personas and
Mm.
things like that. Working with their leadership team on like their marketing strategy and like, maybe in doing fractional type sales leadership. Like, there's a lot more than just sales training. The 2 days someone comes in and gets everyone hyped up for training. Like, there's a lot more that goes into consulting. But what's been fun is getting to see a lot of different teams, getting to see people outside of sports and what that looks like, getting to learn the marketing side a little bit. That's actually where I thought I would, spend a lot more time is like on the marketing side because I felt there was that disconnect between sales and marketing because especially on the B2B side, because a lot of
Mm.
marketers are marketing the product, the fan, the brand, like all stuff that's needed. But I think it was more like lack of resources to really put effort and time and energy towards helping the sales team on the B2B side. And so I would talk to some of my peers like within sports and they're like, yeah, that all sounds great, but could you just like coach our sales team? And so, it was more just sales coaching. And then as you spend more time with them, it's like, hey, well, let's build a cohesive strategy that over the next 3, 6, 9 months, we're in a good spot long term. And we got your sales team coached up on how they can go attack the business community. So,
In some capacity, you and I are going to work together one day. After listening to that, I'm like, I just know it. I don't know when it is, but I'm gonna prepare for it now. So when it happens, I'll be like, yeah, I told you.
Yeah.
Um, because it's awesome to have a mindset like yours and to be able to go into different organizations, figure out the problem relatively quickly, and then provide a solution. Because you're not going in saying, hey, do you need package A, package B, or package C today? And they're like, oh, let me choose from the menu. This is what I need. No, you're going in and it's a comprehensive approach where you're going in and saying every single person in this organization is different than the organization B that I'm going into. Maybe there's some same qualities and there's probably some same problems. I'm assuming the problems are similar
Yeah.
throughout, especially if you're staying in the sport industry. But you get to go in and diagnose a problem and you really get to follow those problems, which is what we talked about at the beginning today, and figure out how to help people, which is what we're in this business for. Uh, I haven't talked about it a lot, and I'm curious because in some capacity, I would like a family one day.
Hmm.
My family would like to be bigger than what my wife wants it to be. So that's a conversation her and I need to have. What is it like working either in the sport industry or even in your own business with a family? And what's that process been like so far?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. And, a lot of appreciation, big shout out to my wife. And I think if she didn't work in sports, I think it would have been a lot more difficult. At least she had seen it, understood it. We were on board for this ride. Like we moved out of Arizona, moved together to Houston for me to take that role, moved down to Miami for me to take this role. And so we got our first two kids in Houston, and then stepping in the VP role, like you're just working more, and there's just more stuff. Like you're at chamber events, you're at games, you're at this, you're at that. Like, and it was like an always on thing, and really we figured it out. But I think internally, like that was eating at both of us. Like she had to carry a big burden, and like I felt guilty not being there for stuff, and um a lot of my reps would be like, I don't know how you do it. And a lot of it was my wife. Like she was able to hold things down at home and do this. I think what's been the blessing out of it is 2 weeks after I got let go, my middle daughter Bianca, she comes in. It's like 3:30 on a Wednesday, and here in our office, and she's like, "Can we go outside and hit balls?" Like she plays t-ball, and like so like I've never been able to do that just during the week, like middle of the day. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going back to work for a team. I don't get moments like this anymore. So it's been nice. I mean, you're just as busy, but you're building something that's for you. And what's cool now is like they're talking about the business like it's theirs. Like I mentioned Bianca, she's my middle one. She's the go-getter. She's like, I'm the alpha, I'm gonna run the business one day, I'm gonna be the boss. And like the others are like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And like we joke, but like seriously, like if this ends up being something that we build, like this is something that if you want to, like you don't have to go work for someone. Like we want to build a legacy where you can work in the business and work with us. They'll probably be like tired of us by that point. But that is what I look at long term, and things that I thought about as I was looking to take this step is like, how could I build something for the generations to come, not just in my family, but to impact people long term. And so that's really what inspires me, and like why I love what we're doing. I'm surprised they haven't got up out of bed and interrupted this yet. So if they do, I apologize. But it's definitely a different lifestyle, but I love it. And I don't know that what I was doing before was going to be sustainable long term as they got older, but I never wanted to admit that, and like admit that I can't do it all. So I can be honest now, like, hey, I don't think that was going to be sustainable.
You have a bunch of awards and accolades in your career. If you can get your three daughters to work for you, that would be the biggest award or accolade I think you could ever get.
Yeah, no, that would be fun. I would. The tough part of like, you know, I don't really coach my kids, but like they definitely get the sales leader, coach pep talks, because like that's just what I've done throughout my career. But like you have to let your reps go through tough times. You have to let your team members go through tough times, and like, trip, slip, and fall sometimes. Like, I want to protect because they're my daughters, but like the only way they're going to learn is for them to make mistakes, and like that's going to be the toughest part. Like watching them go through difficult situations, meet adversity, and not try and come in and like be the hero, and like this is how they're going to learn and grow. That's going to be the tough part, even before they work for me. Like as they go through school, as they go through sports, as they get into college and things like that. Like that's going to be the challenge for me.
It sounds like you're setting yourself up to have more opportunities with them. And I think that's really cool to understand from somebody who is in the sport industry who also sees that potentially might not be a sustainable lifestyle very long term. My wife and I have had some of those conversations very candidly. One thing she's really good at is being very open of like, I don't care if I hurt your feelings. This is how I feel. This is what I see. This is what I need. And again, as a man, I think it's important that we are understanding what our wives need and where that time needs to be spent. You mentioned feeling guilty for not being at the office. That's real because you have teams, especially as a leader, you have teams that you're responsible for. It almost seems like those are kids too at some point, right?
They are.
Um,
They prepped me to be a father really well as like a manager. But kudos to you all for having that conversation because we didn't. And we probably held that in, and that led to outbursts at times.
mm.
So like the fact that you all could be open about it, because we both knew we needed to have it, but we didn't want to upset the other. She was more fine ruffling feathers than me because she's more like that personality where I'm trying risk adverse and like, not let problems come up. But those are conversations I look back 5, 10 years ago we probably should have had as we first got married of like, what is this really? And so, no, again, kudos to you guys for having that because it's not easy. I know it's not.
I actually had a lady who I sat next to in Miami. She came up to me one day and she's like, "Hey, how do you and Callie go through tough conversations?" Right? How do you go through tough conversations? And I thought about it for a second. Said we don't really have a lot of tough conversations. I don't know why. Let me go ask Callie and get her answer. I come back, I ask Callie. She said, "What do you mean? We have tough conversations all the time." I was like, I don't think we do. And she's like, yeah, but we have them so consistently that
Yep.
they're not that tough anymore. Yeah, they
Yep.
were really tough in the beginning, and we talk about some tough topics, but because you consistently have them, they're not as tough anymore.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
What can we leave everybody with today? What did I miss? What advice can you give? What impact do you feel God talking in your spirit that we can give people as we wrap it up today?
No, I think we hit on, overcoming adversity. I think the biggest thing for me, two things. Oh, really three. Be where your feet are. Like that's probably the best advice if I could go back and give myself and not like just put the blinders on. Like just do the role. Don't get caught up in like, and we say this all the time, like the logo on your shirt and everything like that. But like
Hey,
even
my
more
logo's
so,
pretty cool. Come on.
that's pretty dope. Um, but like there's so many like new opportunities now with like women's sports, college leagues, minor leagues. Like it used to be like we got to work at like the big three or big four sports teams, and like it's not the case anymore. So like just enjoy what you're doing, impact people. I think what I learned as I advanced in my career that I wish I knew earlier was, being authentically yourself. I know authentic gets thrown around a lot, but like I'm an introvert, and like being in sales, like there's a lot of extroverts, and like you feel this insecurity at times. So like being comfortable with who you are and knowing what your strengths are and being okay that, maybe you're not always going to fit in. Like that's one. The third is what you talked about. I wouldn't say necessarily AI, but like be willing to evolve and adapt. And I think that's one of the more frustrating things when I have conversations with people, like they're just stuck in their ways sometimes. Like this is how we've done it in sports, and this is the way we do it. This is the way things operate. And it's like, it's changing quickly. And outside of sports, people are adapting. And I feel like we're going to get smacked in the face with it here pretty soon within sports. So that's one thing I like to talk about, whether it's AI, new technologies, new ways of doing things, like changing the way that the playbook's built. Like be okay with that and not be so held on to like this is how things are done, because that's hurt me throughout my career because I'm a very much like routine discipline, like show me the data. And it's like, no, like you got to innovate, you got to try new things and be open to new things, and that's how you're going to grow and evolve.
Gosh, I love it. All right, last thing for you: attitude, effort, results. When I say that, you mentioned it might have been up on a wall where you were at. What comes to mind when I say attitude, effort, results?
Yeah, literally throughout my entire career, it was in my inside sales manual play and inside sales training manual. Like they talked about it. And it's funny because like I was like, this is cheesy. I was 22, 23 years old, like yeah, out of college. I'm like, attitude effort results. Like I'm here to sell tickets. Like, what are we talking about here? But I'm gonna make sure I get the quote right. But my inside sales manager, Jason Howard, he's now at the Chicago Bulls. He said, "Life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react to it." And so he got that quote from somewhere. And like that, like when I heard that in the training, like everything that I had learned, about being a professional changed in that moment. It was
Mm.
like, oh my gosh, like I don't have to respond the way other people respond. Like I have a choice on the attitude I'm going to bring. And then to your point, all right, you have the right attitude, you bring the effort, the results are going to come. I've seen that throughout my career, whether I branded it as that or saw it as that, but like that couldn't be a more true thing. And so I'm glad that you guys have kind of taken that and built a brand around it and like really preaching that and keeping that going because there isn't a more true statement for what we do in sports. And like as I look throughout my career, like that's literally what it came down to. Like, do you have the right mindset and attitude? Do you put forth the effort? Because a lot of people want easy results. Like they say they're willing to do the work, but like, are they really willing to do it? And do you really want like the work that's going to take to get the results that you want? And so that's something you really have to look yourself in the mirror at and be like, all right, if I want that, let me go find out what other people did to get that. And am I willing to do what it's going to take to get there and put forth the effort? And it's easier said than done. So
Ah, man, what an awesome 42 minutes that we've had here today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for valuing your time, especially away from your family. I know that you have a busy schedule. Busy gets thrown around a lot. It's all about prioritizing time. You clearly prioritize time to impact others, and thank you for doing that with us here today.
no, this was great. Hopefully it can come back again sometime in the future. But no, I love what you guys are doing. If there's any way I could help or people that you're mentoring I could help out with, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know.
Deal. Sounds like a plan. Well, attitude, effort, results, community. Let's inspire others and continue to grow together.